after I posted those pictures the other day with the colostrum syringes, I've had a lot of questions around colostrum harvesting and breastfeeding. So I'm going to answer some of those questions now. I breastfed my daughter for 2 years, and any minute now I'm about to become a mum of 2. So I've already started harvesting colostrum for our baby boy. Okay, I'm going to start off talking about colostrum and then move on to breastfeeding, because colostrum comes first. So colostrum is basically the stuff that your breasts make before milk. It's like liquid gold, literally. It's the best thing that you could possibly give your newborn baby. It's filled with so many nutrients. It's so good for them. Now, you do not have to collect colostrum before birth. When you have your baby and you feed them for the first time, what they would be getting is colostrum. But I like to try and collect it before birth, just in case anything goes wrong, in case you're separated from baby, in case they need any antibiotics and it's hard for them to feed, things like that. Also, a good latch with your newborn baby is not guaranteed. Breastfeeding is the most natural thing in the world, but it doesn't always come naturally. It can be really hard to get that latch. So if you think that your baby's not latching, not getting enough milk, you've got the syringe full of colostrum ready. You can obviously do this after birth as well. Even if they're not latching, you can express into a syringe and then give it to them like that. One tip for latch, just as a little side note, is as much skin to skin as possible. Obviously, this is beneficial in loads of other ways anyway, so as much skin to skin as you can. Right, so this is what a colostrum syringe looks like. This is only a milliliter, but seriously, their bellies are so tiny when they're born that they only really need a small amount. But what you do is you would hand express colostrum from your breast. I usually do it into a little pot first. I find that's easier, and then you use the syringe just to pull it out. So if I had a little pot here, I would just go like this to syringe the milk out, and then you can give it directly to baby like that. Is harvesting colostrum painful? It shouldn't be, and if it is, your technique is probably not quite right. There are loads of diagrams online as to how it's done, but you've also got to remember, don't overdo it. Like, as soon as you start, don't think I'm going to keep going until I get loads, because you will cause yourself pain. And don't go too close to the nipple, because that can cause some serious pain as well. I just find it's a really good way to start prepping for breastfeeding. Some women even leak colostrum from as early as like 30 weeks. I've never leaked colostrum, so I do have to hand express to get it out. But it's just so great to have in your freezer as storage, even if you don't use them in the hospital. And another thing, it's great for baby's skin. So if they have like cradle cap, it's also great for your skin too. If you've got any little wounds that need healing, colostrum is amazing, I'm telling you. As I've said, you do not have to do this. So if you're seeing this and you've just given birth, you don't need to think, oh, I should have collected colostrum beforehand, or even I need to start now. It's just something extra you can do to prepare yourself and to have as a backup. Okay, now moving on to breastfeeding. So EBF, exclusively breastfeeding, means that you only give your child breast milk. Now, that doesn't just mean giving it directly from the breast. It can also be via pumping. EBF just means that they're getting exclusively breast milk and nothing else. So I exclusively breastfed Amaya until she was about 5.5 months old, when she started weaning, and then we introduced food as well. I carried on breastfeeding until she was 2 years. She didn't have any formula, but of course food was introduced at the appropriate stage. Okay, does breastfeeding hurt? I feel like that's the question that so many people want to know the answer to. The truth is, in the early days, it really hurt me. We didn't have a good latch. I was learning how to breastfeed Amaya. My nipples were all cracked and sore from constant feeding and having a bad latch. So yeah, it did really hurt me. But some people have a seamless experience. They master the latch from day one and it doesn't hurt for them. So it's a difficult question. I think it will hurt everybody at some point, especially as baby likes to pull sometimes, or even when they're just learning how to feed. I feel like it will hurt everybody at some point. But this idea that teeth suddenly come in as well and really hurt you, I don't ever remember feeling Amaya's teeth. I think she just fed how she fed. She didn't bite down. So you don't need to worry about teeth. It's not like a big thing. Some babies do start biting, but that's a separate issue. When you first feel that letdown as well, so the letdown's almost like a pressure tingling feeling where you can literally feel the milk coming out. In the early days, that were quite painful for me, but that probably starts about 10 seconds into feeding, maybe a little bit less, and doesn't last long at all. And then when it's passed, you feel okay again. I'd say use lanolin nipple cream, because that helps a lot, and you don't need a lot of it, but that helps so much. Also, if you're really struggling, you can get those like silver nipple shields, which help some people. How often do you feed a breastfed baby? Well, you're advised to feed them on demand. So you look out for the cues of when they need feeding, things like opening the mouth, looking round, smacking the lips, and then you try and pick up on those cues before they get too hungry. Babies do cluster feed when they're having a growth spurt. So there's been times where I've fed Amaya, 18, 19 times a day at the worst of it, and it can be exhausting. But they're not always cluster feeding, and generally they go between 2 to 3, maybe more hours between the feeds. They really don't need a lot of milk at a time. They've only got small stomachs, so they can only handle a little bit. A few people mentioned like fears and difficulties and fear of breastfeeding in public. I totally get that. It's a completely normal fear because you're not used to doing that. But the more that you do it, the more you get used to it. You can also choose to cover up if you want to. People buy cover-ups or extra large muslins that go over baby. And mine never liked being covered up, so I didn't. And you know what, like, you shouldn't have to. At the end of the day, it's the most natural thing in the world. You are feeding your baby, and that is it. No one's going to be looking at you. If they do, it's their problem, isn't it? Like, people shouldn't have a problem with you feeding your baby. And it's likely that you will experience some hiccups or difficulties along the way, but like I said, as time goes on, it definitely does get easier. It's just those first few weeks that I think are really difficult in breastfeeding. Okay, as for pumping, so some women decide to exclusively pump and some women decide to pump and breastfeed, do a mix of both. I mostly breastfed Amaya and then I just pumped when I needed to. So for example, if she were going to stay with my mum, I'd just go in there for a few hours, or on the rare occasion where I want ready to give her a bottle for whatever reason, I could pump. But it's best to avoid doing that until at least 6 weeks. So in your first 6 weeks, your body is still establishing its supply. It's trying to figure out how much milk it needs to make for your baby, how many babies it's making milk for. It's like a supply and demand thing. So the more that you draw milk out of you, the more milk you will make. You don't want to end up with an oversupply because you don't want to get things like mastitis, and you don't want to be leaking all the time as well. So in the first 6 weeks, if you can try and just breastfeed, that will probably work out better for your body overall. One thing that I think is really good to collect extra milk, it's called a Hacker. So, Hacker is one brand, but it's like a silicone breast pump. It doesn't actually pump, it just catches all of the milk that's coming out of the other side while you're feeding baby on one side. Because yeah, that's another thing. If you're feeding baby, both boobs will leak at the same time. Like, you can't stop one. So you might as well catch all that extra milk, save it, pop it in a bag. I actually think pumping is difficult just because it's so time consuming, and I feel like that becomes a full-time job in itself. Doing the pumping is fine. If you've got a hands-free pump, I'm going to be using Momco's this time. I've got a hands-free pump. It's great. You can just sit there and get on with what you're doing. But it's the whole like storing it, making sure that you store separately day and night milk because they have different hormones in them, washing all of the pumping parts and sterilising it all, getting all the milk ready. To me, that's just a lot harder than just being able to feed your baby on tap. But of course, individual mothers will decide what's right for them. That's twice now that my phone's cut me off whilst I've been recording. Anyway, what I love the most about breastfeeding is just the bond that I've created with my baby, getting all those extra cuddles, being able to soothe them so easily, not just when they're hungry, but if there's a problem, like boob is often the solution. As well as that, just knowing that I'm giving my baby the best that I can and it's coming from my own body, I think that's so rewarding. And the ease of it as well. Okay, breastfeeding is not easy, but the ease in that when you are out, you don't have to worry about like warming up bottles or anything like that. You can just feed them on tap. I've covered a few different things here, like quite broadly. So if you want any more specific information, or you want me to talk more about pumping or about breastfeeding in particular, just let me know. In terms of feeding beyond 1 year, so extended breastfeeding and any questions around that and weaning them off and things, I can do all of that in another video as well. Thanks guys, I hope this was helpful.